From the Fatheads Eyewear Studio in Indianapolis, Indiana, this is The Skinny.
Maybe I need to start in the trash truck business.
Don't rule it out.
But the steering is spokes on the wheel straight ahead. The steering's broken. Bridges takes the wheel and he goes, whoa, whoa.
He's airborne, and then I'm above him.
Inverted.
All at the same time. Yeah, you're just like, wow, that's a wild picture.
He gets behind the race car and he tells me if I'm good or not, and if I'm good, he'll go, perfect.
I hang up on the guy. I go, who's this? This is Deion Sanders. I go, yeah, nice try. See you later.
Bounce and then this insane roll. That thing sent it.
I hate qualifying. It's the worst. It's literally the worst thing you could ever do.
But I'm smooth and creamy like milk chocolate. Have you ever not saw a Hershey bar that did not look good?
Hi, I'm Tony Stewart.
I'm Mario Andretti.
I'm Johnny Rutherford.
I'm Angel Sampe.
I'm Travis Pastrana.
This is Antron Brown.
Hi, I'm Scot Pollard, and this is The Skinny. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to The Skinny. Right out the bat, I have to applaud Scot Pollard. That was without a doubt the best open I think we've had in our 2.5 years here on MAVTV. Excellent stuff. I'm Ken Stout. The big man sitting beside me, that is Rico Elmore, and then the giant of a man sitting beside him, that is Scot Pollard. Of course, as always, we have the track dude here running the controls, Mr. Michael Young.
Hey.
This will be a good one here. Scott, I got to tell you, obviously, we're going to break away from what we typically do here for our fans at home. As you know, typically we have racers on here in one fashion or another, either a crew chief or a team owner or a president of a sanctioning body or a driver, whatever the case may be. But more times than not, it's a driver. And as you guys know, drivers are typically jockeys. So we always take a picture with our guest, and just something so that we can look back on it in the future. But we look like two giants with this little person between us. Well, today it will be anything but that. Yes. One of the few times where we will have a giant standing between us. This guy played for 11 years in the NBA and did make it to the finals twice, including a win at one of those finals with the Celtics. So we're going to branch off of the racing thing here just a little bit this week. But I promise you, stay tuned. You'll be interested in his story. It is pretty impressive to say the least. So welcome to the show, my friend.
Thanks for having me. I like talking. Good at it.
That's awesome. What a career, dude. What a career you had. And I don't know if you get tired about talking about that career in the NBA, but your path up through there, you were at Kansas and you guys made it to the Sweet 16 4 times, I believe it was. And then you were drafted up into the big league. So a pretty good run.
Yeah. When you're a professional athlete on any level, any sport, it's not luck. Being tall helps. Being a basketball player, being tall. I'm from a family of giants. I'm actually got 3 brothers bigger than me, but none of them made the pros. So it's not just about being tall. It's about, first of all, that drive that most people aren't willing to stay after practice and do all that other stuff, or in the off season, go running or go work out or whatever it is, stretch, race, play basketball with whoever will play with you. All those things in the off season. But then I will admit, yeah, there's some luck there. But, being healthy was a big part of it. Later in my career, my ankles gave out. That's what ended my career actually in Boston. But the drive is what got me there, got me recruited in high school, had a lot of people looking at me in high school, and then obviously making the right choice of going to Kansas. I needed the father figure of Roy Williams. That was my coach in college. And he really helped me become a man. And then I got the opportunity to get drafted by the Detroit Pistons in the first round, 19th pick, and wasn't a great fit. Kept working, got traded to Atlanta for Christian Laettner the next year, and then got cut by Atlanta. They never gave me a shot. I was sick for training camp. It was a short season. I got sick. And but yeah, then I caught on with the Sacramento Kings, and that kind of cemented my time in the NBA. I was able to get into a system that worked for me. And I could go on and on, but that path of being on 3 teams in about a month.
Oh, wow. That all was in the span of a month.
Yeah. At the beginning of my second year, there was a lockout. And so the season didn't start till the spring of 99, like February of 99. So as soon as that lockout ended, I'm in Detroit working out. And I walk in to work out, and one of my teammates, Lindsey Hunter, looks at me and goes, "Hey, man, what are you doing here?" I go, "What are you doing here?" And he's like, No, it was in the paper this morning. You got traded.
That's how you found out.
That's how I found out I got traded to
And
the Atlanta
people think
Hawks.
getting fired by email is bad.
Your teammate, and it was in the paper.
Your teammate.
He goes, in the paper this morning, you got traded. So I go to the GM. He made me wait outside the office for an hour before he finally let me in. And he was like, look, it wasn't final. The guy in the paper guessed. I'm like, guessed? He guessed right that I was getting traded to Atlanta? He couldn't give me a little ringy ding and say, hey, man, possibility that we're getting Christian Leitner up here for your bum ass. You know, maybe give me a little heads up. So I don't walk into practice like, hey, guys, what's up? And everybody's like, ha ha.
And they will too, won't they? They'll
Oh,
beat
of
you up.
course.
Oh man, yeah.
Of course. They're like, hey, man, that guy got traded. It was in the paper this morning, you know. But yeah, that both times I got traded in my whole career, I found out on the media. Second time I got traded, I'm playing cards with my friends in Kansas in my basement. And we're just shooting the shit, playing cards, watching TV. We flip the channel to sports or whatever, which I usually don't do. And sure enough, 3-team deal. Sacramento Kings trade this guy. Indiana Pacers trade this guy. San Antonio trades this guy. I go, I'm going to Indiana? No calls, no warning. Next day, I'm talking to one of my friends because we changed the channel. We stopped playing. I was like, I'm sorry, I got to fume about this. I loved being in Sacramento. I'm from California, and I did not want to come back to the Eastern Conference. I did not want to come to Indiana. And one of my friends and I are on the phone the next day. This is actually one of my favorite NBA stories. He goes, we're kind of commiserating about it. And I knew, you know, this is 2003. So there's call waiting, you know, on my landline, but it wasn't like I had an iPhone and it was like, oh, this is a 317 area code. It's Indiana.
Right.
I just click over. I'm like, hello. And he goes, hey, Scott, Larry Bird. I go, Mr. Bird, can I get off the other line? He goes, yeah, no problem. I click over. I go, hey, Mike. Hey, man, I got to go. Larry Bird's on the other line. He goes, listen, dumb. If you don't want to talk anymore, just tell me. Don't lie to me and tell me Larry Bird's on the other line. And hung up on me. That's how I got traded to the Indiana Pacers. My grandpa, Pearl Sr., he thought basketball was not a real sport. They moved to Utah so that my dad could train to become a boxer.
Oh, wow.
6'8" and about 250 in high school.
The Skinny is brought to you by Fatheads Eyewear. Fatheads Eyewear, hardcore since '04. And American Coach. Innovation is our life force.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to The Skinny. We have a big man on the set with us here, Mr. Scot Pollard, a longtime NBA player for 11 years, and was just telling us a great story about how he got a phone call from some guy named Larry Bird, which is pretty cool. As usual, while we're at commercial break, the conversation tends to go on, and Michael says that has to be a surreal, phone call with a guy like that. Was he somebody you watched? And you said you didn't really watch sports when you grew up.
No, when I was a little kid, I played all the sports, but I grew up in San Diego. I was outside a lot. I wasn't watching TV very much. I didn't play a lot of video games. And
You mean you didn't have the great winters that we have here and
yeah, no.
didn't stay inside and watch basketball?
No, I grew up where it was always room temperature. Easiest job in the world is a weatherman in San Diego.
Yeah, it's going to
Hey,
be great.
Ted, how's the weather going to be this week?
Great.
Pleasant.
So how tall are you?
6'11". And the reason I don't say 7 feet is because my brothers are bigger than me. We used to kick it out of me when I said I was 7 feet.
And so how tall are your brothers?
2 of them are 7 feet, one's 7'3".
Wow.
And then the short one's 6'9".
And you had mentioned that the only people you watched was Patrick Ewing and your dad. So talk about your dad for a moment.
So my dad's in the State of Utah Hall of Fame. He was a back-to-back state high school champion. Went on to the University of Utah, had a good career there. Played a little semi-professional basketball, but is mostly known as probably the first big man that just dominated. He actually in Montana was where he was born before he moved to Utah as 15 or 16-year-old. But he set the state scoring record for the playoffs in Montana at 15, and I just heard it got broken like a couple of years ago.
Oh, wow.
Like in the 2020s. He was a badass. And my grandpa, Pearl Sr., he thought basketball was not a real sport. They moved to Utah so that my dad could train to become a boxer.
Oh, wow.
6'8" and about 250 in high school.
Wow.
So Pearl
That's a
Senior
reach.
was trying to get Pearl Jr. To be a boxer, and that's why he moved to Utah. And then the basketball coach got a hold of him and was like, "Hey, Pearl Senior,
Right.
yeah, but he's
I
not
got a
going to be
better
a
gig
real
for
good
him."
boxer. He could be a real good basketball player." And he'd already been playing basketball. It wasn't like he had two left feet. He'd already been playing basketball. So, but yeah, then he shredded basketball. He destroyed the game. Every time I played against the Jazz, which was a lot, every time I went back to Utah, there was always somebody that would come up to me before or after a game. "Man, I saw your dad play. Whoa, I never seen anybody that big or do that thing with the basketball." And, this is the infancy of basketball. It's the 50s, but still.
The same thing you went through, he did as well, correct?
Regarding what?
Your health.
The more we find out about my issue, the more we think that it correlates with exactly what killed my dad. Yes.
Age?
He was 54. He was 53 when he got diagnosed, and the hardest part about transplant for me was the mental side. And very quickly, I had a heart transplant this year. When we started talking about it, it brought back memories of when I was 16 years old, and I'm in the office with my dad and the cardiologist and my mom. And the cardiologist looks at him and he goes, people's hearts beat like this. Yours kind of does this. And I go, all right, that's not good. And they're like, we're going to put you on a transplant list. This is my dad.
And how big was your dad at the time? What was it?
6'9", 380. And, when you think 380, you're thinking, okay, he's heavy. And he wasn't thin, but he was 6'9". I'm 310 pounds right now. And you wouldn't really think that I'm fat, but I'm considered morbidly obese. I'm over, my BMI is over 30. So
yeah, which I don't get.
Yeah.
I don't understand that, but okay.
Well, because there's no data for people my height.
Yeah.
Right? But so my dad was 380. Did he have a belly? Yeah. But he wasn't like, spilling over everything. And so, but back then the technology was your donor had to be your size. So the doctor looked him in the eye and said, "You better make your final arrangements, because when you go, I won't have a heart for you. Anybody that has a heart that will pump 380 pounds is going to have problems also. It's just not going to work." So he did make his final preparations. It's not like he hadn't stayed. He was broke. but he passed away about a year later. And so when they came to me last year, and I'm in the office with the cardiologist, and he says, "You know how most people's hearts pump like this? Yours kind of does this."
Oh, wow.
I lost my mind.
Back to
I know how that movie ends. Yeah.
And he goes, "We're going to talk about a transplant list." And I'm like, "Oh, I'm dying. I'm going to die." Well, thank God technology is a little better in 2023 and 2024 than it was in 1990. And my donor had to be a big man, and that's all I know about him so far, is that he was a big man. Other than that, I don't know. They said he could be as short as probably 6'3". But again, I don't know anything about him other than they said he was a big man. So thanks to the doctors, and mostly to my wife, who never left my side and saved my life just as much as the guy that switched out my heart. They said, "We'd like to have you come back down for a cardiac MRI." I said, "Well, what's up?" And they said, "Well, your heart grew." I was like, "Oh, how often does that happen?" They were like, "Never."
He is 6'11", played in the NBA for 11 years, made it to the Sweet 16 4 times. You were looking at Mr. Scot Pollard, who has joined us here on the set at the Skinny, the Fatheads Eyewear Studio. Welcome back. I'm Ken Stout, Rico Elmore, and the track dude as well, running the controls. Man, quite a story. You were talking as we went to break, talking about the heart replacement, and something I definitely wanted to dedicate some time to here, because as you mentioned, and as I had read it, you can't just get a regular heart. You have to have a heart from, an elephant, man. I mean, a really large person. And I believe part of it is just literally the size that's in your chest cavity that it needs to be filled. Is that correct? Do you know why or is it just the sheer pumping size, the volume that it has to pump?
It's volume. It's about the volume of the heart and how much it can pump. A heart from a normal sized person isn't going to pump enough blood to get to my extremities. They're a long way away. And so that heart had to be a big, strong heart. And so that meant it had to come from somebody that had a big, strong body. Again, I don't know much about him other than he was a big man. But, in my dad's day, it was just not possible. And so the technology has improved. Fun story about that. You mentioned the size of the cavity. I switched over from biopsies because I'm out of rejection right now. I'm 0R, which means I'm not rejecting the heart at all. The drugs are working. They're killing me, but they're working.
Super.
Yeah, the drugs are attacking my kidneys really hard, but they're keeping me alive, sort of.
Your heart's good, though.
Yeah, my heart's good.
Got a good heart.
Well, this literally the cardiologist and the nephrologist, the kidney specialist, they both said the same thing. They're like, this is the big thing. We'll fix anything else. Like they literally are treating my kidneys as a side effect.
Wow.
They're like, if we have to get you a kidney, we can do that. The heart, they're like, you did the big thing, protect this.
Wow.
The rest of it we'll manage. So back to the body cavity. They put the new heart in. They did a couple echoes right after. That's an echocardiogram. It's like when you're a pregnant woman and you get a sonogram. It's the same thing. It's just noise to see where everything is. And I got to go around my titanium chest plate they use to put me back together. And this, all the stuff they use. So then after that, after the first couple, I'm getting biopsies to check for rejection. Well, they're all 0. So then they're like, okay, we can stop doing biopsies because it's a very invasive procedure. They got to go through your neck and they take little chunks of your heart.
Wow.
And so they're back to echoes. Well, they did my echo and they said, well, what's your schedule like next week? And I was like, good, but I just got back from Nashville because I go to Nashville for all my appointments still because that's where the hospital is that I ended up getting my heart. And they said, we'd like to have you come back down for a cardiac MRI. I said, well, what's up? And they said, well, your heart grew. I was like, oh, how often does that happen? They were like, never.
Wow.
And they said, don't panic, though. Your numbers look good.
Don't panic.
But we'd really like you to be back next week.
Good news is there's plenty of room for your heart to grow in your chest.
So they came. I went back. They did a cardiac MRI, but there's nothing to compare it to because I haven't had one with the new heart since transplant. So I'm going to get another one at some point this fall to check. But I had another echo, and they said it looked the same. So true story. Their medical profession. They've been doing this forever. Vanderbilt leads the world in number of transplants. That's why they were able to get me a heart so quickly.
Yeah, and explain that real quick because when we went to break, you said that your cardiologist here that you were talking to said, "Listen, this is where your best chances are."
Well, yeah, he was honest. He said, St. Vincent's is great. It's a very highly acclaimed heart transplant facility. I know people have had their transplants there, but for me, because of my size, I wasn't getting any old heart. And I'm also O positive, so that's a lot of competition because most people are O positive, and your heart has to match your blood type. So that made it really difficult for me to find a heart. And they said, look, we just don't do that many. We're not going to get you a heart. It's going to be like winning the lottery. So I had some procedures at the University of Chicago Hospital.
Like winning the lottery.
Correct.
This is your life.
So they said, we recommend you get listed at Chicago too. Now, the way the national donor system works, there's regions. Well, Indiana's a region, Chicago's in a region, and they're not the same. Vanderbilt's also in a different region. So it doesn't make sense to get registered in 3 different hospitals here in Indiana because they're all getting the same donor.
Gotcha.
You're going to be arguing with yourself, basically, to get a donor. So getting listed at multiple places was what all 3 teams suggested in order to get me the best chance of getting a heart. Well, went to Chicago, went through all the testing there, and they were going to call me the next week to get listed to tell me what my status would be. But the next week I was in Vanderbilt to get listed. I'm going through all the testing there. And day 2 of the testing, they said, you look like you're not doing anymore. You're going to ICU. We're keeping you.
Wow.
At Vanderbilt.
Wow. So that was it. I was there supposedly for 3 days. I ended up being in the hospital for 26, which is not bad. A lot of people.
You were that close to dying?
I was really close, and I didn't think so. I was like, I'm just tired. I need a break, and athlete brain. I just need a little rest, and I'll be fine. But no, they saw it. They did testing, and they said, you're not leaving. You're going right to the ICU, and they had a heart for me 10 days later, which is just a miracle.
Wow.
A miracle.
Hit the lottery.
I hit the lottery. Later. Well, and also Vanderbilt does a whole lot more. They do more than anybody in the world. So they have access to more because they do so many. Their technology is there. I mean, everybody's good. I'm not saying anything bad about St. Vincent's. Their technology is there as well. But when you're doing it all the time, it's easier for you
Their
to get
numbers
it.
are bigger.
You're going to get a heart from 3,000 miles away. They have technology. They send these boxes that keep the heart pumping and circulating fluid through it. And it's alive in the box. And I signed up for that. It's kind of experimental right now, but I signed up for it because Vanderbilt does it. I ended up not needing that technology, but they can technically bring a heart from Australia now. They can keep it alive for 2 days, and it'll just get to you when it gets to you, and then it's ready to roll. So that's not what ended up happening for me. They ended up just finding a donor that was big enough, but yeah, it was a mess. But back to the, it grew, and they're saying, don't worry, come back for echo. Everything seemed okay, but their professional medical opinion, the best in the world, all 3 teams and a friend of mine that's in private practice, they said, well, it's probably that it's in a king-size bed now, and it's just kind of starfishing. That's the best guess.
With that, we'll take a quick break, and we're going to stretch out a little bit, and we'll be right back.
I got an ultimate reminder of don't waste time doing things that don't make you happy and don't give you a better life or don't give you a good memory.
Welcome back to the Skinny, ladies and gentlemen. That's a nice wide shot here at the Fatheads Eyewear Studio. Scot Pollard here. He actually fits in the chair. This is why we got the large chairs. Unfortunately, some of the drivers' feet don't touch the ground, but we got the larger chairs for people like you.
Yeah, no problem with that.
The track dude, Mr. Michael Young, you got something for us, buddy?
Just a quick question, and I've noticed you've mentioned it a couple times about the donor and that you don't know who it is. And they say at times when you receive an organ from someone that you somewhat get something or maybe something ethereal from it. Did it change you mentally, just the thought of knowing that there's somebody out there, that there's a part of them inside of you?
So, first of all, the HIPAA laws are why we don't know anything about the donor. I've written my letter and sent it through the hospital network to get to the family, and they say most people don't respond. And I get it because it's not like my donor lived a long life and fell asleep among family and friends. 99 times out of 100, actually 100 times out of 100, it's a tragedy. So a lot of the donor families don't want to relive it, even though their donor gave life to probably 5 or more people and made some other people's lives better through skin donation or eyes or whatever. I don't know. So I don't know anything about him. I've heard those things about people taking on traits. I'm part of a group on Facebook. It's got over 10,000 people of transplants and caregivers. And some people say, they swear, like, I never liked cheese before, and now I can't get enough cheese. I think it's my donor heart, that hasn't applied to me. The thing that had changed me is all mental. I am very short-tempered as far as wasting time. I got the ultimate reminder that life is short. I got an ultimate reminder of don't waste time doing things that don't make you happy and don't give you a better life or don't give you a good memory. And so I pick and choose things a little bit more acutely than I used to. I don't waste time.
My daughter is a bone marrow transplant recipient from cancer. And it's interesting, some of the things that she does have now that she didn't have before.
Huh.
And a little bit of a different scenario because you are literally taking on somebody's genetic mapping in you. And like her hair used to be one way, now it's another way.
Oh, wow.
And but the technology, and I kind of go back to what you were talking about with your dad and everything like that, that you have great operations or great things like the Indiana Donor Network.
Mm-hmm.
Brian Clausen,
I was just going to bring up Brian Clausen, Driven to Save Lives.
Yeah, Driven to Save Lives. Brian, nobody really knew that he was a donor. There's a lot of people on their license, and for you at home, there's a lot of people on their license that says, do you want to be a donor? Yes, I want to be a donor. I'm a donor. Great. You want to be a donor? My heart maybe would have worked for you, but anyhow, I'm glad we didn't have to go there with it. But do you want to be a donor? Yes, I want to be a donor. So now you're a donor in the state of Indiana. It's kind of a smaller donor network, as I remember. But if you sign up for a national registry, whether it is Be the Match with the with the folks at the Leukemia or Lymphoma Society, bone marrow transplant, the heart, things like that, then you're in a national database where, and we'll throw something up on the screen for that to try to show more of that and where you can sign up and things like that. But Brian Clausen, him, on the other hand, his recipient came back in the guy's life that he saved, much like yourself, how it happened, is very involved in being an advocate for it and saying, hey, this is what it is. And Brian's family, of course, Brian, unfortunately, was involved in a racing accident. And when he was involved in that racing accident, it was not, if you looked at him, you thought, man, he's just asleep. And at the end of the day, he had kind of disconnected his ticker from, everything, his brain from everything else. So, but he was a hero, just like the person who saved you is a hero. And I think it's amazing. So,
and Donate Life Indiana is actually affiliated with Donate Life America. They don't work together all the time, but they are in a network. So yes, if you get into that Donate Life Indiana, as I understand it, you can allow them to put you on the national network.
I was just going to say, I was surprised when you said there was different regions. I'm surprised you don't just sign up and it's a nationwide deal. And
I think it stems back to the technology of being able to get an organ to the
They
recipient.
need something close.
It has to be. Like, even now, they said I had to live within 4 hours of the hospital.
Wow.
Now, Vanderbilt made an exception because they knew I was going to be about 4.5 hours. And I was like,
4 hours on the hammer, you can get there.
Well,
yeah.
then they just told you
If they'd have called me,
they were going to keep you. So
if they'd have called me, I'd have been there in 3 because Louisville's right across the street. I do have big feet.
we're going to take a quick break. Hey, did you know this guy was also on Survivor? We'll talk about that when we come back.
The surviving part is absolutely real. The editing, I mean, it's TV.
The Skinny is brought to you by American Coach. American Coach, innovation is our life force. And Fatheads Eyewear. Fatheads Eyewear, hardcore since '04.
Welcome back to the Skinny. We have a great guest on the set with us here, Mr. Scot Pollard. We talked about his involvement in NBA. If you've been watching the show here the last couple of segments, the fact that he is a heart transplant recipient, as was his or your father did not receive one, unfortunately, and passed away because of that. So incredibly knowledgeable conversation. I'm sure it will help a lot of people out there that are watching out there as well. We're going to lighten it up here a little bit, though, as I teased as we went to break. Yes, this guy was on Survivor. 32nd season, brains, brawn, and beauty.
Mm-hmm.
I want to talk about that season, dude. I'd love to know some of the behind-the-scenes stuff, but you made it to the last 8, day 27. You went a long ways, man.
Yeah, it was a fun little vacation. I got the villain edit, of course. I show up and I take my shirt off. They're like, oh, tattooed giant guy. We're going to make him a villain with the other tattooed guy. There was a bearded guy named Jason. And so we kind of assumed we were going to get that edit. So at times we kind of played it up. Sometimes it was just natural, but sometimes we played it up. But it was really fun. I had a blast. And, when I got voted out, I took that as a badge of honor. After the jury, early on, you get voted out when you don't make the team strong. But after the jury selection starts, you get voted out because you're a threat to win. They don't vote out people that can help them anymore.
Right.
You're on your own. And so when they're sitting there looking across the beach at you and they're like, I haven't won a challenge. I couldn't. I was just too, like, they built them, but they're built for normal sized people. There was things where we were like stacking 2x4s, these little short, foot tall 2x4s. And we had to step in between these little boxes of wire. And I'm like, dong, size 18s, the girl that's 5'4" is just like through these little hoops. And I'm like, bing, bong, boom, caveman, not happening. So I couldn't win a challenge to save my life. But yet they viewed me as a threat because off camera, everybody liked me, like they were like, and I'm talking to everybody and everybody was kind of cool. And so that's how I had to take it. And then behind the scenes, after I got voted out, I had a Snicker bar in my hand, and it was in my mouth and in my belly within about 5 seconds after being off camera. They handed me one after I did my exit interview. And then you just go back to Ponderosa, and I had about 11 days till the game was over. It was vacation. The only thing missing was my family. I mean, I missed my wife and kids terribly, but other than that, it was great. There was all the food you could eat. We're sitting on a beach in paradise.
So did they hold you the whole time?
Yeah, you can't go.
So you say Ponderosa, it's a nice hotel, or what? Where were you at?
We were in Cambodia. They'll never go back to Cambodia. They filmed 2 seasons there, and they'll never go back. It was
too much work.
Well, every single person on the Brain Tribe was on that island. Every one of them ended up getting surgery at some point to remove staph infection. They lost over 20 crew.
Oh my goodness.
They had to send them home.
That's what I wanted to ask you. Are there camera people around 24/7?
Absolutely. There's no breaks. The surviving part is absolutely real. The editing, I mean, it's TV. They're gonna make the best.
They're gonna make a show.
It's not gonna make a great story when the giant caveman guy is sweet and everybody's liking him and he's singing his funny songs. And
Right.
It's a lot better story if he's a big mean giant guy. You know.
I don't know. That might have been funny too. It's like,
well, I did it all, and they kept running over. They're like, "Hey, man, stop singing. We can hear you. We're doing testimonies over there. We can hear you singing. Shut up." And I'm like, "Screw you."
How close were the islands or the different teams, if you will?
So when you our season, I can't talk about any other because I wasn't on any other, but our season, everything was on a different island. The challenges were on a different island. Each tribe had their own island. And as far as I know, the tribal councils were on a different island, but those might have been on that island, might have been the same as some of the challenges. But I know what I do know is we don't know, because we would walk down like we're walking to the challenge. But really what we did is we'd walk down, they did the helicopter, and then as soon as that was over, we'd put our tiki torches back, and then we'd get on a boat that was surrounded with tarps so we couldn't see where we were going.
Oh, wow.
And then we would ride 45 minutes about every single time we went somewhere. It was never on our island. And we couldn't see where we're going.
Wow, that's incredible. I wish you were like a tribal council, but I really don't know. I'm thinking to myself, well, certainly you went to tribal council. How do you not know? But they literally closed everything off, so you couldn't. Did they give you a reason why they do that?
Just because they don't want anything happening. It makes it easier to distract you with one producer in the boat, making sure nobody talks, because you're not on camera and you're not mic'd. So they want zero gameplay without the cameras rolling. That's the only time there was no cameras going, is when you're going to and from challenges or to and from tribal council. That's it.
We're coming back after all the drama, and you guys can't talk for 45 minutes.
Absolutely. Somebody's going home, or we lost, or whatever, and you can't talk. The producer's in there like watching you. And so you just have to sit in this boat, and we're this close. We're down in the bow of a boat sometimes, and we're sitting like this, like leaning against each other, hitting the waves, and stinking and sweaty, and everybody's
can't
just
say anything. Yeah.
You dropped the log, man. You can't say a thing about it, you know. But yeah, it was just, that's one of the behind the scenes things that you just don't think of, because they make it look like it's just, oh, we're just going for a stroll on the beach with our tiki torches. See you at the challenge.
Then they load you up.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to take a quick break. I want to hear a description of what the Ponderosa is and what it's like. Stay with us.
I'm like, why'd you apply for Survivor? You can't swim.
Welcome back to the Skinny, as we are here in the Fatheads Eyewear Studio, Indianapolis, Indiana, the racing capital of the world. But we're talking a bit of basketball, a bit of Survivor, a bit of heart transplant with Mr. Scot Pollard, who's on the set with us here today. It's been an incredible show, man. One thing's for sure, you're still full of enthusiasm and energy. So I would say the heart is doing its job. In the previous segment, you talked about going back to the Ponderosa. Okay, give us a description of the Ponderosa.
So again, this is Cambodia. And this is where we did Survivor School before the show starts. Like you fly over there with producers. We're all on the same plane. Can't talk to each other. We flew around the world. Cannot speak to anybody that we know is on the show with us. And there was producers there making sure. You go to the Ponderosa, which in our case there was about 10 bungalows on the beach that we didn't get to go in. They put tents on the floor, 1-person tents on the beach. And that's where we slept for 3 days or 4 days.
Hold on a minute.
Yeah.
1-person tent.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. On my feet.
Because you're like a person and a half.
Yeah.
So.
I was like, really?
Your feet are hanging out the zipper.
My door was open, and they're like, "Dude, you got to zip it up." And I'm like, "Why?" And they're like, "Because we can't have it. If we see you get out, you're off the show." I was like, "I'm not on the show. We haven't started yet."
What about my feet getting out?
And so that was a big deal. I had to sleep diagonal in the one-person tent so that they could close the zipper, because if they said, if anybody's zipper is open before we say open your zipper in the morning, you're out. They just threaten you because they don't want any gameplay to happen when there's no cameras. So back to Survivor School, that's where you're sitting there. Again, you get to read books, you get some breaks, but mostly you're sitting in class and they're saying, don't eat this, it'll ruin your day. Don't eat this, it'll kill you. If you see this bug, run. If you see this animal, probably won't, but if you do see this animal in the ocean, don't touch it, it'll kill you. And so it's just all that kind of stuff, like basic Survivor stuff that they're like trying to get you to educate. Well, it was really easy for most of the people on my season because they couldn't swim. I'm like, why'd you apply for Survivor? You can't swim, but they could. So
seems like a bad idea.
It was, yeah. Well, if you watch our season, there's not a whole lot of water challenges, and the water challenges that were, it was always the same people swimming.
You can walk.
Yeah, basically. They're like, Scott's doing this part because I just grab the buoys and I start walking. Everybody else is like,
So the Ponderosa.
Back to the Ponderosa. Post-game Ponderosa, way better. All the talking you want to do. We had parties. The crew set up a Bond-themed party, and the helicopter came over and filmed us like partying like James Bond. We all dressed up. It was cool. All you could eat, but it's back to these little bungalows. Now, there was a Cambodian family running this place, so they were the chef, and they were there. They lived right behind the little main bungalow where the kitchen was, and there was just a deck, and then we actually got to sleep in a bungalow after.
How much weight did you lose?
46 pounds in 28
Oh,
days.
my goodness, dude.
Yeah. I was back down to playing weight. I got there, I was 311. I left at 266.
Wow. That is brutal.
Yeah.
For sure.
Maybe I should try.
Was that math right?
Yeah,
265,
yeah,
266.
Heck of a diet.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So the surviving part was real.
How do they notify you that you're going to be on the game? And then how much time do you have to prepare to leave for a month?
Total about 7 weeks. But pre-show, they contacted me in late 2014.
You were going for 7 weeks?
About, yeah. Yeah. Pre-show, they contacted me in 2014 and asked if I wanted to be a part of it. I said, yeah. So they said, you have to go through casting like anybody else. You have to make a video like you applied. And so I made a video like I was applying for Survivor, but I knew I was going. And then I went through casting, and they were just making sure that the fit was right, and they were getting other cast members. So some of the people I was in casting with at this hotel in LA ended up being on our season. And then some of them, as I was watching, I watched a couple seasons after mine because I never watched it before. But that during casting is when they gave me seasons to watch. They were like, here, watch this season and watch this season, because it was former athletes on the show. And they're like, you got to form a strategy to try.
Who was a former athlete?
One was Clifford Robinson, who was another NBA player. He was the first NBA player to be on it, and he got voted out early. He was, I think, the second or third boot. And then Jeff Kent. And I learned a lot from Jeff Kent because, as it turned out, the crew told me all this. But Jeff Kent went on the show saying he was a motorcycle dealer from Dallas. Everybody knew it was Jeff Kent. The whole cast knew it was Jeff Kent the whole time, but they went along with his stupid lie. And then they voted his ass out because he was lying to them the whole time, and they knew it. So I was like, well, I'm not going to be able to do that. They're immediately going to see me and say, either he's a pro wrestler, even if they're not basketball fans, they're going to be like, he's a pro wrestler or he's a big football player or something, because there's just no hiding. I'm 7 feet tall and 200, at that point, 310 pounds.
We would kick your ass for saying you're 7 feet tall if we were able to do so.
Yeah.
Just in honor of your brother.
Thank you.
Can't get our foot up that high.
But yeah, and so that helped me form my strategy of, I got to tell the truth. I got, first day I was like, hey, I played in the NBA. And then, a couple people were like, I knew it, and so it was good that I outed myself immediately, and I used it to my advantage. I said, hey, look, guys, no one's going to give a millionaire $1 million. I'm your guy. I'm going to ride with you. I'll be your vote. And I did. I made a couple different partnerships that way.
Good strategy.
And it got me kind of far. I got to the jury, and then they didn't like that idea anymore because it looked like I was actually going to beat them.
Awesome stuff here, talking with Scot Pollard. We have one segment yet to go, and we're going to talk about his documentary on ESPN. Stay with us.
Want to get the skinny on other guests in different types of motorsports? Check out our YouTube page and get the skinny. The Skinny is brought to you by Fatheads Eyewear. Fatheads Eyewear, hardcore since '04. And American Coach. Innovation is our life force.
Welcome back to the Skinny. Great stories here out of Mr. Scot Pollard. Great for him to join us here on the set. As I tease going to break, he had a documentary done on ESPN, and you said when you were getting your heart transplant done, they were actually following you around at the time. Is that correct?
Yeah, so when I went public about my heart failure and that it was looking like I was going to get a transplant, they contacted my wife, who's my agent. She kind of handles everything because she's smarter than I am. Makes sense. So they contacted her about, potentially doing an E60 in that series. And they sent us a couple of them, and we watched them, and we said, all right, if you're going to treat us like that, we'll do it.
Well done.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they did. They do a great job. Dan Lindbergh is the producer, director. I don't know exactly his title, but he's the one in charge, and he's done a great job with those. And so, I gave them full permission. They were in the operating room. They watched they filmed my old heart being taken out and my new heart being put in. They've got that footage. It should be out later this year or early next year in 2025.
Oh, so they're still working on it.
Yeah, we just did interviews last week here in Indiana. They interviewed my wife, myself, and two of my boys, and so we'll see. They're coming back for my senior in high school senior night. He's out for the season, but they're going to come film us tailgating and just kind of get some B-roll for that. But the reason we agreed to it was because we're promoting organ ownership or organ donation. Sure. And so that's why. That's the whole premise of it. And I've spoken to Donate Life Indiana. We're going to be partnering up. I'm going to be doing some stuff with them. And actually, another person has contacted me about making a documentary, more about my whole life, but with this part being one of the series. So that's in the works as well. We have to wait for the ESPN one to come out because we're going to get some of their footage from them. But yeah, we're just doing all this to try to promote donorship and getting more people to think, you know what, it's not creepy. I thought it was creepy. I didn't want to do it. I was never a donor. But then I learned about it, and I thought, you know what, if something happens, I'm not using them, and it's not creepy anymore. And the fact that you can be 5, 7, maybe 10 people's hero and save their lives, why wouldn't you want to do that? If something happens to you and you could be a bunch of people's heroes, you're talking about the family. My family certainly loves my donor.
I have a quick question about the heart, because you said most people's pump like this. Yours was kind of like this. Was that your nervous system telling it to pump like that, or it was the heart itself? So at the end of the day, the question is your heart pump like a normal heart now?
Now it does. This one, yeah.
Okay.
My heart was attacked by a virus, and it released what we think is a genetic issue because it's very similar to the symptoms my dad had. My heart was beating 10,000 extra beats a minute or a day. And so I was exhausted all the time. I was out of breath all the time. This time last year, I'm not doing this interview. I'm asleep. After 2 minutes of talking, I'm done. And so, yeah, I'm doing better. As soon as I woke up in the hospital with my new heart, and I had the tube in my throat still, and I was not happy about that. It's a good thing they had me tied down, and they did. But I gave my wife the sign that I was okay, and then they pulled the tube out. And of course, what I sang a stupid song that I made up in my head. I left my heart in San Fran, Nashville. First thing I said after they pulled it out, because my brain was
like, he's fine.
I didn't know you were such a singer. Even I mean, I guess I'd have to go back and watch season 32, but I didn't know you were a singer, man. You're giving us a little song here on the Skinny. That's a first.
My brain wasn't working. It was in brain fog for all my heart failure, and I just forgot jokes. I forgot stories. I couldn't talk. I forget what I was talking about. And man, I woke up and I was like, I'm back. And
Really?
And my brain is working. I'm a patient for life. There's always going to be a chance something goes wrong. This might be my last day, because they don't know. I've told you, my heart grew. That's never happened. Children, yes. Children heart transplants, their organs grow with them. But adult to adult, they've never seen it. And so I've asked them for a prognosis, and every one of them just says, we just want to keep this heart beating as long as possible.
Hey, man, it's been a great time. Thanks for taking the time.
Absolutely.
Really,
Thanks for having me.
appreciate it,
Thanks for letting me talk a lot.
That's awesome stuff. That's why
Nobody wants to hear anything.
That's why we have nothing informative to say. So that is the Skinny on the big man right here. Make sure you follow him along. And one more time, what is the donation? The
Donate Life Indiana is who we're partnering with, and then I don't know what the title of the E60 is going to be, but it's coming out later this year, early next year, and like Rico said, you can get your driver's license when you fill that out, or if you just want to sign up, it's an easy search. I did it myself and just went, and there was one on my phone. I have an iPhone, and I was going through the health thing. And it was like, do you want to sign up to be a donor? I was like, yeah. And it was right there. It took me a minute, and now I'm signed up.
Awesome stuff. That is the skinny on the big man, Mr. Scot Pollard. We'll see you next week.